The next item is Bill 23-171, Minor Consent for Vaccinations, Amendment Act of 2020. Councilmember Gray?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there discussion on the measure?
Yes, Chairman.
Councilmember Trayon White?
So I want to thank Councilman Gray and his diligence on this bill. I have reevaluated my initial support for this legislation. For the record, I have spoke to Councilman Gray. We are setting up some meetings with other council members, including industry experts, to discuss the bill. However, parents have a fundamental right to direct the upbringing, education, and care of their children. This bill, which is the Minor Consent for Vaccination Amendment Act of 2020, the Supreme Court has entrenched history of protecting the fundamental rights of parenting regarding their children. A government must prove that infringement on the parent's liberty is essential to fulfillment of compelling interests and is the least restrictive means of fulfilling this state interest. I'm not convinced of this high standard is met in this legislation. I'm a parent, and hearing from other parents, it's hard to imagine a child as young as 11 years old. I have a 12-year-old making decisions regarding vaccination that could impact them for years to come. And even if the child is capable of meeting the requirements for the informed consent standards in the legislation, the scientific evidence that the physical, mental, and emotional development of a child that young, including the pre-adolescence, varies, and is often not sufficient enough for a child to make well-reasoned decisions about risk-taking involvement their health and well-being. Additionally, this legislation does not equally permit the child to use the same application of their comprehensive risks and benefits to refuse a vaccination that their parents have previously chosen for their child to receive. But consenting to a vaccine and to consent to for a child alone is acknowledge they have abdicated their constitutional right to a trial by jury should they become injured is a highly questionable occurrence that may lead to profound legal effects as a result of them consenting to this vaccination. Medical practitioners, schools, and others should not be permitted to or coerce impressionable minors into medical procedures that is capable of causing injury or death behind their parents' back. Unlike medical, school, and other personnel administering vaccines, parents are legally accountable for the healthcare and education of a minor child when that child is experiencing a vaccine reaction or becomes chronically ill or disabled. Additionally, the U.S. Federal Vaccine Injury Compensation Program has awarded more than $4 billion to vaccine victims since 1988, and 2 or 3 vaccines injured plaintiffs are turned away without financial reports. In conclusion, I understand the majority of council members may support this bill as of right now, and I cannot do so in good conscience, given consent in the bill as early as 11 years old. And I already talked about Councilmember Gray and I have agreed to meet to discuss the bills with some medical professionals. So I will be voting no as related to this bill, but look forward to further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Not that I want to provoke a debate, but I want the record to reflect a contrary view, and that is that I think that public health can very much be in the public interest, and that is have a compelling state interest. And we see that today with the pandemic and the need for, because of public health, to alter certain behaviors. That's how important public health is. I think there's a compelling state interest there. And I would also say or note that vaccines, the kinds of vaccines that are authorized under this legislation are vaccines that have been deemed safe and reliable through the drug approval process. It includes the Federal Drug Administration. I think those are very important criteria. We're not talking about just any medical procedure, but we're talking about vaccines that have gone through a rigorous process. And we're seeing that as well today, both in the measles epidemic and the COVID pandemic. Is there any further discussion regarding this legislation? Councilmember Che? There's no more first round. Second round would be Councilmember Trayon White.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to note that during the rebuttal, there has been comments about the Center for Disease Control having stamped these said vaccinations. For me, it's not an issue of the vaccination. It's an issue of the council voting to circumvent the inclusion of a parent making the decision about their child. You know, and the floor is an 11-year-old. I have a 12-year-old son who just can barely put together a 5-page paper or finish his homework on time or be up late at night playing Fortnite, making decisions about his health. And so for us to circumvent that process is very worrisome for me. And that's why I stand as relates to this said legislation as we attempt to use the law to remove parental involvement as relates to an important decision made by a minor as young as 11 years old.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion on this bill, we have the bill before us. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Chairman Mendelson?
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie? Seems like we've lost him. Councilmember Pinto?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau?
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Silverman?
Yes.
Councilmember Silverman votes yes. Councilmember Todd?
Yes.
Councilmember Todd votes yes. Councilmember Robert White?
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White?
No.
Councilmember Trayon White votes no. Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds?
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Che?
Yes.
Councilmember Che votes yes. Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Grasso?
Yes.
Councilmember Grasso votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie?
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 12 yeses and 1 no.
The measure is approved.